Hello and good day, everyone. You are tuning in to the Undeniable Podcast, an ambitious foray into the exciting yet not often enough explored world of excellence in the Virgin Islands. I am Shea Alexander, the host of this series of exciting conversations, and I am the founder and principal consultant of OAC Group, a multidisciplinary consulting firm offering strategic growth and business development solutions. Undeniable has been curated for those keen to learn from individuals at the height of their career. Together, we'll enjoy frank discourse and unpack what it means and takes to be great undeniably. Undeniable leans on OAC Group's extensive network of clients, partners, and friends to feature an impressive roster of industry leaders and brilliant minds in riveting, unscripted conversations monthly. So, hello again, everyone. This is Shea Alexander, your host, and of course, today also your guest for Ep.3, Part 1 of the Undeniable series. I want to first start today's episode with two apologies. The first one isn't so serious, but of course, I have kind of misled you guys because my typical scripted introduction, which mentions persons at the height of their career, obviously does not quite apply to myself. I am very proud of the success that I have managed to cultivate, and I'm very excited about what else I have in store for myself and what else I'll be able to squeeze out of life. Um, but I don't, at the age and stage that I am at now, consider myself to be at the height of my career. When I wrote that introduction, really, I was speaking about some of the more critical parts of this podcast series, who are my guests. But there are, of course, planned interventions where I am going to be coming on by myself and talking about what I've spoken about so far, talking about O'Neill Alexander Consulting Group, and talking about where I want this podcast series to go. Because I think just as much as I want you to understand my guests, as successful as they are relatable, I also want to be someone that you can relate to and understand as I try to do things here in these British Virgin Islands. And apology number two, which is a bit more serious, is a lot of persons who have been listening to the podcast pointed out to me that the audio sounded as though I was keeping the mic in front of myself and needed to position it more squarely between myself and my guest. Now, you were wrong, but you were also right, and I'll explain what I mean. I have lapel mics that are connected or were connected in episodes 1 and 2 to my computer via a transmitter that you plug in. I discovered after realizing that episode 2 audio was as bad as episode 1, if not worse, that despite the fact that the mics were connected and registering as capturing, there was something happening where they were not transmitting properly to my computer. So you were wrong in that I was not hogging the mic. There wasn't a single mic to hog. It was actually lapel mics. But you were right because the lapel mics weren't actually transmitting to my computer. So the computer was recording through its own mic, which of course was facing me as my laptop was in front of me so I could have my notes. So I apologize to you guys, but I also thank you for your feedback. And I also thank you for sticking with me because, of course, issues like that can be a bit embarrassing. But as a consultant, as a professional, as a person, I have really learned more and more, especially in recent times, to appreciate failures and mistakes as a critical part of growth and success. So, thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for staying. And I do hope you enjoyed today's episode where I'm talking directly into the lapel mic, high quality, I hope, and it's properly recorded on my phone. I have tested several times to be sure I don't have an error again. So, today, of course, like I said, I am the only person you'll be hearing from. So, I hope this feels like a bit more of a one to one, private, intimate, and inspiring conversation. And I wanted to tell you guys a bit about who Shea Alexander is. Of course, I don't consider myself to be famous. I'm not a particularly extroverted or outgoing person. But I do know that I've been in enough spaces and places to have some semblance of an idea of who Shea is. And a key part of what I do as a consultant with my clients is ensure that they manage their brand. So if you're going to be out there try your best to make sure that the impression that is left is one that you have curated and cultivated. So today's episode, I'm going to be doing that with you guys. In case you don't know me, my name is Shea Alexander. I am from the beautiful island of Virgin Gorda, here in the British Virgin Islands. I am 26 years old as of today, September 8th. But I think this episode comes out on Wednesday, which is the 11th. I'm sorry, today is September 8th. Tomorrow is September 9th. The episode comes out on the 11th. My birthday is Tuesday, September 10th. So I will be making 27 at that point. I'm terrible with numbers. I'm so sorry. That was too much wrong in a wrong to simply say how old I was going to make and when. But if you were to follow me on LinkedIn and try to figure me out from a professional standpoint, my LinkedIn reads that I am a business developer, strategist, and brand enthusiast. So business developer is a bit of a double entendre, in that I obviously am personally someone who is a business person. So I develop businesses from scratch, both mine and my clients. But I am also a business developer in the more technical and industry speak sense of sales and marketing as well. I consider myself a strategist. I didn't always, but as I started working particularly with clients with larger firms, they were the ones who point out to me, Shay, you really have a good strategic mind. And so I've really started to build my consulting around that. And, if you want to understand how I perceive strategy, I identify or define, strategy as fundamentally one, identifying and auditing the resources and assets that you have, figuring out what the goal that you have is, and then deploying those resources and assets in the most strategic way towards the achievement of your goal. So, we use the word strategy a lot in warfare, right? Where we're thinking about the main goal being beating our enemy back or annihilating them completely, or simply winning today's battle. The resources or assets that we would have if you're thinking about actual traditional real world warfare might be your tanks, your infantrymen, worst case scenario, your nuclear option, perhaps literally nuclear bombs. But also the spies that you have who can get you information. So what do I mean when I say deploying them efficiently? How do we use the assets that we have? Let's say, for example, the human lives that we're put into war. How do we use them in a way that allows them to work best? So if the person is trained as a sniper, don't waste them um behind a rifle, because there's probably a rifleman who's better with the rifle and thus is more efficient in his use of bullets and how many people he actually takes down, and the sniper is better behind a sniper rifle, right? And so forth and so on. So how do I use them most efficiently, and ultimately how do I actually win the war? How do I get my goal accomplished? I hope that was not too macabre of an example, but I find traditionally the whole term strategy, when you use it from a battle standpoint, I think it's easiest to understand. And brand enthusiast. This speaks to me both professionally and personally, because obviously a lot of times when we hear the word brand in the Virgin Islands, we're thinking name brands, so designer labels, Fendi, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Hermes, etc. I do love those things. Everybody that knows me knows that I love a good designer. If you are saying, wow, I'm listening to this, it's Wednesday, Shay's birthday was yesterday, but I have a couple hundred or $1,000 to buy him something. Yes, labels, designers, love them. But more importantly though, for me as a business person, I love the art of designing a brand. The art and science, I should say, because that's what really appeals about branding to me. It's a very interesting marriage, I think, of psychology and business. So how do we create an identity that appeals to people and persuades people, and gets people to attach in their minds value intrinsically to our products, right? So, I'm a brand enthusiast by default. I just can't help that. And of course, if you were to go a bit further down my LinkedIn, it would tell you a bit about my past. So, I graduated high school here on the island of Virgin Gorda, Brigada Flex Educational Center. When I graduated, I had done a few things in school, like, debates. I had won the Junior Minister of Tourism competition. I graduated valedictorian. I had pursued some CXCs independently. I was the first in the territory, went to HLSCC, love HLSCC, really enjoyed my time there. Then went abroad to the UK to pursue my bachelor's degree. During all of this time, once I had finished working at the college and I had opted to take a gap year, I started working at the Department of Trade. That was initially supposed to be a 2 month stint, but it soon turned into a longer term during the whole of my gap year. And also, when I went to do my degree, I would come home for Christmas, Easter, and summer and work at the department. Then I worked there for about a year after school. I learned so much from the Department of Trade. I loved it. I felt a lot of synergy with the department. I really think even now there was a part of me that thought that I was going to end up going back there. But it just seems like that was not what the fates had in store. I don't think there was a lot of alignment with me in the organization, particularly as it relates to upward mobility. But from a technical standpoint, I loved the Department of Trade. I loved working with business people. I loved understanding their problems. I loved helping them find solutions, whether it was solutions relating to the department or the wider solutions out there in the real world, which is what inspired me to end up being a consultant. And after the Department of Trade, as most of you probably know, I then worked with the Junior Minister of Tourism. Now, what most people don't know is I was working with Honorable Flax Charles from the time I came back from school. So, as you've probably started picking up, I love doing as many things that I can as once. I believe that life is finite. Well, we know that life is finite. So, again, I try to squeeze as much out of it as I can when I can. Came back from school, was working with her chiefly around just like managing her social media, writing speeches. But when I left the Department of Trade and she was then transitioning to be the Junior Minister for Trade and Economic Development, there was obviously a lot of alignment. So I started working with her as what they call Ministerial Special Advisor. Really, really enjoyed that working relationship. Kudos to Honorable Flax Charles for giving the opportunity to me despite my youth. And kudos to me, I think, for exceeding expectations and doing a fabulous job of it. Call her and ask her if you want confirmation. So, during, before, and after that, obviously, I started, while I was working at the department, I also had started a very small consulting firm, really just me, offering services that were specific to brand development. So, what my efforts really were around a lot of was writing things, designing logos, designing graphics, things of that nature. But as I started transitioning out of the department, I started getting a lot of work that was more broad range. So, a lot of things that had to do with acquiring resources, advising on certain projects, advising on general restructurings, and things of that nature. So, I realized that the name Indigo Brand Strategy, which was obviously very niche, pigeonholed me a bit and did not fit my wider expertise and wider interest. So, I rebranded to O'Neill Alexander Consulting Group. And very quickly, the reason that I chose that name is because O'Neill Alexander, obviously, O'Neill is my mom's last name, and that's my family here in the British Virgin Islands. And Alexander is my dad's last name. Consulting because I wanted to be an active participant in the reframing of the idea of what a consultant is. I know many of us think of it as somebody working with the government being paid oodles of money to do nothing, or even globally, you think of it as somebody coming in and writing reports and analyzing processes, but not actually executing. And I wanted to demonstrate that consulting could be I'm going to tell you how to do this best and I'm going to help you do it. And that is precisely what I have been doing for the last couple of years. And group, because one, O'Neill Alexander Consulting Group really relies on a network of other consultants, professionals, attorneys, designers, creatives, etc. And it is technically a group of companies in that there is O'Neill Alexander Consulting Group Limited, but there's also OAC Group Investments, which I'm not quite ready to talk about, but I think when I'm really able to tell people about the vision behind this firm long term, it's very exciting, I hope, because I think I have really big plans that a lot of us will be able to be a part of. So, O'Neill Alexander Consulting Group, like I said, initially started as Indigo Brand Strategy, but my firm's growth has always been defined by the needs of my clients. So I pride myself on being a very healthy mix of proactive in terms of sitting down and deciding what I want to do and how I want to do it, but also reactive in terms of when clients have a need, not saying, well, hey, you're gonna have to go to this person or I'll have to pass you off to this person, but instead saying, you know something, I want to work with you on this. I want to figure this out with you. And because of the existing confidence and trust between us, being able to do so in a way where we both learn. And so it's part of my firm's driving ethos, always learning, because I learn in tandem with my clients. I grow in tandem with my clients. One of the things that I pride myself on that for many listeners may seem completely absurd, but When I started, a lot of the things, and I still do this, and I still would do this if the case comes in front of me, people would come to me with a project. Because, of course, like I said, I was offering a general breadth of advisory services. So I kind of had a full idea of what was going on internal to my clients' operations and structure. So I would be aware of something that they needed, and they would say to me sometimes, well, can you help us figure out who can help us, for example, really good example with recruitment. And I would say, well, I think if you trust me enough, I'd be happy to do this for you gratis, no payment. Of course, keeping you completely informed, and this was a key part of what made them confident in me, leaning on those persons in my network who are established professionals, for example, in human resources and recruitment, with the end goal being that at the end of this, I would have built the structure and expertise to do this the next time on my own. And that's exactly what has happened. So about a year ago in October of 2023, I did my first recruitment. And now I recently actually just did a much more senior recruitment, and I'm managing it completely on my own. Same with real estate and services of that nature. So I really have practiced of growing in tandem with my clients' philosophy. And another key part of my philosophy, which actually comes back to the idea of growing around your network and community, is I believe in investing back into the human capital of the British Virgin Islands. My firm is not a super huge one, and the money that we do make, I put it right back into growing on our expertise and our resources. But when I can, I have in the past and I continue to do so. For example, I offer an annual scholarship in honor of my mom, who was a very, very long term educator over here at BFEC, which was a $5,000 scholarship to completely cover the tuition and other costs for a non local student attending HLSCC. We've also purchased computers for one of the local primary schools and other things of that nature, because I think that your success as an organization, I think the biggest metric of it, beyond of course your ability to sustain yourself and perpetuate, is also the idea of seeding positivity in your community. So how can you give back to the space that you're in? Whether you're large or small, just yesterday in church, the one of the presentations was about the lady with two mites in the Bible. So if you don't know that story, it's essentially where Jesus commended someone for giving the two mites, which I think were like small coins of not that much value, because of the relative size of it as compared to people who are probably the equivalent of millionaires but given $1,000. Right? So it's important whatever you have, give to your community, because it is not just about the goodness of it, but it's also about creating a business environment in which you yourself can thrive. And it's also about putting your brand out there in a positive way, because that is part of the psychology of what makes people willing to support you. And like I said, it also helps with that whole networking aspect. I cannot tell you how many people, as I've grown my services, have helped me on projects or with understanding a project completely free of charge, just because I had done something for them or for their community that they found to be positive. So when you can, if you can, be a good person, even in business, it comes back to you tenfold. So, O'Neill Alexander Consulting Group right now, and I'll tell you, I've really fleshed this out super strongly in the last couple of weeks because I was developing a brochure which I then sent out. O'Neill Alexander Consulting Group is a consulting firm, and we have two main goals right now here in the British Virgin Islands. We help clients establish presence in the Virgin Islands, and we help clients expand on their presence in the Virgin Islands. So the former is typically offered to international clients, but of course there can be local entities trying to establish for the first time as well. And the latter is typically offered to local clients, but of course there can be international clients already present who want to expand on their presence as well. And how we achieve those two main goals in tandem with our clients are along three main suites of services. So structuring operations and resources, that could include everything from assisting with company formations. We actually currently have an agreement in place with a really long established RA, registered agent, or trust company as people typically call them, in the British Virgin Islands, where I offer the full range of consulting necessary to appropriately structure, gather and compile and submit your due diligence, etc. And then they handle in cooperation. And we offer that at a completely bespoke price based on your needs and what's happening in your company. Um, but then that could also include things like setting up your hierarchical charts, setting up how you're gonna pay your employees and things of that nature. Operations, everything from writing SOPs to helping with the definition and coordination of new initiatives and services in an organization, or even things like something I'm really excited about, which I just kind of signed a contract for, is helping a local entity, quite an established entity, go through an international certification process, which is one gonna help their operations operate at a higher level, but also help them to attract whole new ranges of partners and clients as well. And resources. So chiefly the resources in the first instance were things like a physical space, personnel through recruitment, or government related services like a trade license or work permit, etc. Brand and business development, anything from logo design, visual identity design, communication of your brand, etc. Or the marketing and sales aspect of that. So helping people really promote their brand and convert those people in the space of being exposed to your brand, converting them to actual clients and consumers who are now part of your revenue stream. And finally, advisory and directorship services. So that just covers the broad scope of everything else. But it also specifically refers to where I may be not necessarily the executor of the project, but just generally being a part of the strategic oversight of the business and specific efforts that it's enacting. And of course, directorship services, acting as a director on non-regulated entities. Like I mentioned earlier, my suite of services constantly is growing in line with my clients. We are always learning and we are always making efforts to ensure that where our clients have demands, we are able to supply the services, the product, the resources, the expertise, whatever it is, so that they can climb that next rung and continue to achieve exceptionalism and define legacy for themselves. And that, of course, is our tagline. Just speaking quickly about some of our recent projects, I'll give you a recap of some of those from last year. Just because I think professionally I don't necessarily want to talk about what's happening quite right now. But last year we did quite a lot in terms of international level marketing. So we had the Mindful campaign, which we spoke with Dr. Rubin about the other day, which was apparently so well executed that they wanted to feature it in Iceland for the World Psychiatric Association's annual conference, which went off extremely well. I also worked with a boutique law firm and got the principal in two international conferences, as well as a host of local speaking opportunities. And we really did well in terms of pushing her presence here in the British Virgin Islands. I pioneered a new trade license thing, which I was very excited about, where cryptocurrency entities who could not get VASP licenses at the time would get a BVI trade license, which kind of worked in everybody's favor. And there were some other things, but I think those were some of the key ones that I wanted to touch on in the moment. Um, but what I started to do as I turned over into 2024 is think about how I could really market O'Neill Alexander Consulting Group. Because if you've paid attention to sort of the history that I've given, I went from working at the Department of Trade and also working with the Junior Minister for Tourism to that contract with the Junior Minister for Tourism expanding significantly to be what was essentially a full-time job, even though it technically was a consulting engagement. So to give you an idea of intensity, Honorable Flax Charles and I live on the same island, and it would go from her picking me up at 7:40 in the morning to go down on the 8 o'clock ferry to her dropping me at home when we came up on the 9 o'clock ferry. So I'd get home at about 9:40, the earliest. And we did everything from speech writing, communication, strategic planning, reporting on things, coordinating feedback things for public consultations, writing projects for instrument design and distribution to students. It was very intense. I really enjoyed it. I loved working with the junior minister, but it didn't necessarily allow me to do too many other things. And of course, like I said, I want to be a part of redefining what a consultant means. So conflict of interest was also an important thing for me as well. I didn't want to overstep or overlap. So after that, which ended in 2023, at the start of 2023, I then sat down and I'm sorry, no, the start of 2023. I then sat down and I started to think about how I wanted to restructure my firm. So I really started developing out, okay, what were all of the deliverables I've executed successfully? How do I properly put them together into different suites of services as I just did in terms of structuring operations and resources, brand and business development, and advisory and directorship services. How do I sell this brand to people who may not even be familiar with what consulting is? And one of the key things that I did was an exercise where I created a brochure. But the brochure was not just about marketing externally, it was also about me getting a solid idea internally of what I wanted to do. Because I will admit, one of the challenges you can sometimes have when you find yourself able to do quite a few things is figuring out, okay, but where do I actually want to be? And where is best from a business standpoint to stick and stay? Because the fact that I can design logos does not mean that the growth I want to achieve can be executed off of just designing logos. So I still may need to sit and think about, even if I'm going to continue designing logos, what other services do I need to tack on there to create a brand that is sustainable and that can sustain me personally as well? And with the whole brochure design, I really was able to develop in firm terms things like my suite of services, my philosophy as a brand. So, always learning, reinvesting into my community, working with a network of experts, all of those sorts of things really helped me to understand what I was doing and also I think why I was doing it. And it was part of what really got me to form up on the idea of the Undeniable podcast series. Because as much as I mentioned the idea of giving even when you don't have a lot, I can admit that there was a brief point in my business's history where I was like, well, my firm is very small. I'm reinvesting a lot of money back into what I'm doing. I don't have so much extra surplus to give to people. So, what can I really do in terms of community investment? And I recognized that whether I liked it or not, and whether I was 100% comfortable with it or not, there were people younger than me, older than me, and my same age who genuinely wanted to learn more about what I was doing and how I was managing to do it. And I don't say that to be egotistical. I don't think I have this massive audience or following out there just desperate for my words. But I do think that I can inspire people just as everybody else can inspire people. And I think more importantly, and that's the purpose behind this podcast, I want to take inspiration a step further because I appreciate that a lot of times in the Virgin Islands, even if we happen to be aware of people doing exceptional things, I think we don't often get the opportunity to understand how they manage to do it. Because as you know, we can be one, very critical, and two, very envious. So, success for a lot of people in the Virgin Islands is something that they're very secretive about. And I understand that. I remember I had a consistent client of mine say to me very early on, Shay, as you do well, make sure you don't buy anything too flashy. And I said, why? And he said, because the minute people see you doing well, they will want to kill you. Obviously, not literally, well, maybe literally kill me, but I don't think so. But I got his point and I understood what is a motivating philosophy for a lot of people who do very well in the Virgin Islands. I have to be careful about how many people know I do well because they will seek to destroy me for my success. But I think we have to redefine the paradigm because if we all have success and have it, how does the song go? Hide it in a bushel. I don't know if it's a song or if it's a Bible verse or what it is. But I think there's some story or song that alludes to the idea of keeping a light hidden or keeping it where other people can't see it. If we all make the choice to do that, who assumes responsibility for the task of inspiring the next generation? Who ensures that people like my 4-year-old niece, soon to turn 5, has the opportunity to see other people, women, black people, Caribbean people, people who she can relate to, actually doing well? Who makes sure that she understands, even if you don't have parents doing this or people in your immediate orbit doing this, there are people like you doing it. And so, if you really push yourself, if you really have a clear goal, and if you really think strategically and create the right community around you, you can do it too. In fact, you can do even more. Because I think that is our responsibility as the generation before the next, not just to ensure that they survive, but to ensure that they thrive and to ensure that they exceed us. Because every generation is supposed to have the cumulative knowledge of the generations before, as well as the opportunity to learn entirely new things with which they can change the world. So, this podcast series is just my attempt to do that. I want you guys to hear about people like Dr. Rubin, who happened to go to Iceland to talk about a local campaign. I want you guys to hear about people like Dr. Smith, who are changing education fundamentally in the Virgin Islands. And I want you, in listening to them, to realize she is just like me. If I focus, if I follow the threads and the consistent themes through all of these guests, I too can actually achieve success. I can be a change maker. I can go down in the history of the Virgin Islands. And I truly believe that. I'm not saying that because it sounds cute. I'm not saying that because I think it's powerful, positive thinking. I'm saying that because I really believe that. My dad is a psychologist and an educator. And our whole life, especially when I would come home and get upset and say somebody was stupid, my father would always remind me I think he had a book called The 21 Forms of Intelligence. And he would always say to me, Shay, everybody has a different intelligence. And if you want to be helpful and if you want to be a part of making change, take the responsibility of helping other people to find their light so that they can take it into the world and inspire other people. So, the Undeniable podcast series is just that. And I wanted to just quickly, before I wrap up part 1 of today's episode, I wanted to quickly just recap what I'm attempting to do with my first 2 guests. Because I know, of course, that they really did very different things. And I asked them very different questions. But if you really listened, you'd start to realize there are some consistent themes running through the idea of being successful in the Virgin Islands. So, one of them, a very quick one, is the idea of understanding when you need help and being willing to work with brilliance. The first part is easy. Most of us can tell when our body or our psyche is telling us, I need help. Most of us can tell that. The challenge is a lot of us are not comfortable with somebody being better than us in a specific instance. So I know that I want a garden. I know that I don't know anything about gardening, but when the horticulturalist comes to my home and I hear how confident and experienced and articulate he is about his craft, I start to feel insecure. And that's a completely absurd feeling because why should I know about that? Chances are the things that I know about, the horticulturalist doesn't know about. But I think, despite the fact that we understand that intellectually, emotionally, a lot of us aren't quite there. So we know we need help, but we sometimes deliberately get help that isn't that good because we feel secure in those people's presence, or we're not comfortable around people who are really exceptional at their craft. But they both spoke about the need to identify those people and to pull them on. And shameless plug, in both instances, I think they spoke about me as one of those potential people. Wink, wink. Um, they also both spoke about the idea of cultivating a team, the importance of things like partnerships and networking, and having people around you who you can trust and who you can rely on, and specifically who you can expect to say, Shay, I know that you love Sekani, I know that you love this last collection of bags, but I don't think they're gonna sell well, right? Because that's important. If the people around you can't give you good feedback, who can? And what is their value if they can't do that for you? If they can't bring different perspectives, what is the purpose of them being in your orbit? And they also both spoke a lot about the ideas of intentionality and planning. Because ultimately, success is not just the attempt. If I go outside now and I happen to jump, I can't really say that I successfully jumped. The success part comes in because I decided I'm going to go outside and try to jump. So success is a lot about intention. It's a lot about understanding, coming back to the idea of strategy, what my goals are and how to best accomplish them. Um, and the conversations that I have lined up following this one, which I interrupted with just me alone, they also speak a lot about the idea of success in pioneering ways. So to just tease some of my upcoming guests, and if you know who they are, don't say, but one of them is an individual who I think has been instrumental and really phenomenal in bringing something very new, but extremely culturally relevant and culturally transformative to the Virgin Islands. And I think in many ways is actually putting us on the map. And the other one is somebody who is putting us on the map in a more niche, but I think equally important way. Because she is someone who has recently achieved a global position in a multinational company through a space that, for the most part, I have never seen somebody exceed the local leadership level. So I'm really excited about those conversations. But I hope that you guys look out for them. I hope that you guys are able to catch up with me through this podcast series. This was part one of episode 3. If you have the time or if you haven't gotten the chance to already, please go back and listen to episodes 1 and 2, both of which also have 2 parts. They're easy listening. You can throw them on while you wash the dishes or ride on the boat or drive to work or do some monotonous task at work. Um, but I really look forward to catching up with you guys in part 2 of episode 3, which is also going to just be me. And of course, as with every other format, in episode 3, part 2, the second part of this episode, I am going to be speaking a lot about my philosophy for success, which is underpinned fundamentally by the word audacity. But I'm also going to be talking a lot about audience building because if you haven't already caught on to it, I believe a lot in building community. I believe that that's a key part of success, both in business and in your personal life. So, thank you guys so much for listening and thank you for joining me today. I look forward to you hearing me later and, of course, hearing from you through whatever feedback model you may choose to use. Have a good one and bye.